There have been 7 years without a new Strokes album. It was a dark time indeed. While indie rock band The Strokes started off on a career high with their debut, every subsequent album has seemed to get more and more negative reception, with 2013's Come Down Machine being considered a huge disappointment by most. Since then, apart from an EP in 2016, the band have basically all been doing their own things. Julian Casablancas started a really great band called The Voids. Nikolai Fraiture started a supergroup called Summer Moon with members from James Addiction, Aha Hers, and the Airborne Toxic Events. Nick Valenci started a band called CRX, as well as doing songwriting and session work for people like Sia and Blondie. And Albert Hammond Jr. has been carrying on his pretty successful solo career, releasing 2 more pretty great records. It made sense why we waited so long for a new album from the band, considering how busy they've been, plus the tension within the band became very evident on the last record and subsequent EP. But on their 6th album, The New Abnormal, the band sound reinvigorated and much more together than they've sounded in years. The band sound much more cohesive and like a full collective rather than a group of people with separate ideas that struggled to come idea that I kind of think they did on both their records in the 2010s. I was hesitant as to the sound of the album, considering it was being produced by Rick Rubin, who has made a lot of poor sonic choices throughout the last couple of decades, but this album is crisper and more interesting musically than anything the band have done in a long time. From the opening track, The Adults Are Talking, the band come out on full form, creating a song that is very distinct to the band's sound. Starting with these really cool sounding vintage drum machine sounds, the guitars are bright, crunchy and covered in delay and reverb effects, showing their love of new wave and post-punk. Casablancas' vocals are whispered and fragile and feature these really great rebellious lyrics about the powers that be. The track has one of the best hooks on the album and some of the best bass work I've ever heard from the band. They also call back to the synth-pop inspired dance rock sound of albums like Angles on the track Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus, with its gritty guitar lines played underneath lavish, bright and expansive synthesizers. Casablancas sings in this very reminiscent tone about coming to terms with the past being stuck in the past. I think the lyrics of Nostalgia fit really well with the sound of the track, which is clearly indebted to 80s pop. And with the following track, Bad Decisions, the band playfully interpolate Billy Idol's Dancing With Myself to create an ode to power pop blended in with the gritty and heavily distorted garage rock the band are known for. The track is a self-aware commentary about the band's interaction with fans and how they just want the band to essentially redo the first album without growing. It's one of the catchiest and most bouncy tracks on the album. It's easily one of my favourite tracks from the year so far, and I can't help but sing along at the top of my voice anytime I hear it. Eternal Summer is also a return to the more synth-pop sound, but with a clear influence from disco. The track has a very bouncy and funky feel, with Casablancas singing these high falsetto vocals about the pros and cons of eternal bliss. The bass work on the track is fantastic, and I love the blending of the punchy bass lines over the organ lines in the chorus and the funky guitar lines that sound plucked straight from Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd. The first track that we heard from the record was the synth-pop ballad At the Door, which features some of the best production and songwriting on the album. I dare say this is the best song the band have written since Angles, and one of the best songs they've ever done. It's a very bare yet atmospheric track about breaking off a relationship. It features Casablancas crooning over vintage synthesizer choir sounds and guitar lines that are really clean, beautiful and atmospheric. It has the best hook on the album, one that is incredibly catchy and sung passionately. Admittedly, I felt a little bit underwhelmed the first time I heard the song, but after a couple listens I realised just how great it really is. Pretty much the rest of the album showed a band going into this very somber, slow and atmospheric post-punk sound reminiscent of many of the bands they came up with, such as Interpol. These moments showed a band feeling much more mature and introspective than they ever have before. The guitar interplay is still there, drenched in reverb and delay. Casablancas croons in this unique blending of monotone mids and passionate falsetto. The band sound fresher and more focused than they have in over a decade, and it's not just because of their relationship improving, but Rick Rubin really pulls in the band and allows them to be creative without ever losing their identity. This feels like an album where each band member have rediscovered themselves and brought their own unique elements to the table without adding something in that changes the flavour of the recipe. The more I return to the album, the more I realise just how unbalanced much of the band's post-debut material has been. This is the most passionate and creative the band have been in years, and I dare say this is the most exciting album they've done since possibly their debut. It takes that blending of new wave, post-punk and synth-pop that made their last two records so interesting and adds much more introspection and cohesion than anything we've seen from the band in a long time. This is definitely much more of a slow burner than an album filled with those indie club night bangers, but it's one that is gripping, fascinating and ultimately incredibly well written. I'm going to give this new Strokes album, The New Abnormal, 4.5 stars out of 5.